Okay, this is section 6.1, solving one-step linear inequalities. When we finish today, I expect you to be able to solve a one-step linear inequality, and I also expect you to be able to graph one. So first thing I want us to do is review solving a linear equation. For some reason I accidentally put one step, and this is not a one-step equation. So when we solve this equation, my goal is to get the variable by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3 from each side. So now I have 2x is equal to 5 minus 3 is 2. Divide both sides by 2 and I get x is equal to 1. Now when I graph this on a number line, I'm simply going to go to 1. I'm going to make my circle and fill it in. And that's all there is to it. What we do with linear inequalities is going to be very similar. But first I want us to take a look and see what's different between an equation and an inequality. Now when I look at 5 plus x is equal to 10 and 5 plus x is less than 10, the first thing I notice that's different is an equation contains an equal sign and an inequality doesn't. So an equation has an equal sign, an inequality has an inequality symbol. So it could have less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Okay, now let's just solve this one. Going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I have x is less than 10 minus 5 is 5. Let me go over here and solve this one. Subtract 5 from both sides. And over here I have x is equal to 5. Now notice the difference. X equals 5. When I have an equation, let me rephrase that. When I have a linear equation, there is only one solution. When I have an inequality, there are many solutions. This one says x is less than 5. I can think of tons of numbers that are less than 5. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 2, negative 15, negative 10 million. So an inequality has many solutions. Now when I graph x equals 5 on the number line, just sketch this out real fast. X equals 5. Well, x is only equal to 5 at this point right here, so I only get a closed circle. With an inequality, the type of circle that I have on my graph is going to vary depending on which inequality symbol I have. If I have less than or greater than, I'm going to have an open circle. If I have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, I'm going to have a closed circle. Now let's take a look at this one. Let me graph him. So I've got a 5, a 6, and a 4. I'm just going to do a couple of numbers on each side. So I have x is less than 5, so that means 5 isn't included. So I'm going to have an open circle at 5, and I want to shade the area that is less than 5. Well, is 6 less than 5? No. Oh, 4 is less than 5. So when I graph my solution for an inequality, there will always be shading. So we'll always have shading on our graph. Okay, so just to go over these symbols again, this is the symbol for less than, this is the symbol for greater than, and when I graph either less than or greater than, on my number line, I am going to have an open circle, and that simply means that the number that I'm talking about, like if I had x is less than 5 like the previous example, that 5 is not included in my solution. I get really, 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 really close to 5, but I never actually get to 5. Now, if I were looking at x is less than or equal to 5, my graph is going to be very similar. The difference is going to be, I'm going to put my circle at 5, x is less than or equal to, that means 5 isn't included. And if 5 is included, it's going to be shaded in. And I'm going to shade it in the direction when I'm from the rest of my graph where x is smaller than 5. Is 6 smaller than 5? No. 4 is. So I will shade to the left. Okay, now let's graph these. X is less than 2. So let me go and put some numbers in. Okay, 2, 3, 1, 0. X is less than 2. That tells me I'm going to have an open circle. And I want to shade in the direction where x is smaller. Is 3 smaller than 2? No. Is 1 smaller than 2? Yes. So I'm going to shade on my number line to the left. I'm going to put a little arrow on the end so that you know that it continues to go in that direction. Now I'm graphing x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Greater than or equal to. That tells me that I'm going to have a closed circle. Negative 1 is my important point. I'm going to fill my circle in. And now I've got to figure out which direction I'm going to shade. Is negative 2 greater than negative 1? Is it larger? No. Is 0 larger than negative 1? Yes. So I'm going to shade to the right this time. Okay, very important note. Whenever we multiply or divide by a negative number, we have to change the direction of our inequality symbol. And we're going to have a few examples where we do that. Now a few questions I want you to ask as you solve. Do I need to change the direction of my inequality symbol? Okay, that just means, hey, did I multiply or divide by a negative number? Okay, when you're graphing, will your circle be open or closed? And which direction will you shade? Will you shade to the left or shade to the right? Let's work a few of these. X plus 5 is greater than or equal to 3. First thing I know is I need a closed circle. So I am going to solve. I need to isolate my variable. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So now I have x is equal to, oh, I always try to put that equal to, x is greater than or equal to 3 minus 5, small number from the large, keep the sign of the large, negative 2. Okay, now I'm ready to graph. So I know I'm going to have a closed circle at negative 2. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Now which direction am I going to shade? X is larger than negative 2. The numbers get bigger as I go to the right. So I'm going to shade a little ways and put an arrow on the end. Next, solve and graph. Negative 2 is greater than n minus 4. My goal is to get the variable by itself. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So now I have negative 2 plus 4. 2 is greater than n. Okay, now this one's kind of written backwards. And we want to rewrite it with a variable on the left, and that's just going to make everything easier for us. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look and we're just going to write it down again. So okay, I'm going to read it backwards. If I'm reading backwards, that's less than. N is less than 2. Now it's going to be easier for me to graph. Okay, I've got an open circle at 2, and I want to shade the area where n is smaller. I know that the numbers get smaller as I go on the left of the number line. And I'm done. Okay, now here's another one we're going to be graphing. A divided by -3 is less than or equal to 12. Okay, I see right at the beginning I'm going to have a closed circle. When I isolate the variable, I'm going to multiply both sides by -3. So now I have A. Oh, what did I just do? I multiplied by a negative. When I multiply by a negative, what do I have to do with my inequality? I have to change the direction. So now A is greater than or equal to, what's 12 times -3? -36. Okay, now it's time to graph this one. I know I've got a closed circle. My important point is -36. So at -36, I have a closed circle. A is greater than or equal to, I want the numbers to be larger, so I am going to shade to the right, and that's it. Okay, we're going to solve and graph. This one, 4x is greater than or equal to 8. I immediately see I've got a closed circle. I want to isolate the variable, divide both sides by 4. So x is greater than or equal to 2. So 2 is my important point. I'm going to have a closed circle at 2. And I'm going to shade the areas where x is larger than 2. So 3 is larger than 2, so I know I'm going to be shading to the right. Then put my arrow on the end to let whoever's looking at my graph know that it continues. Okay, last one. -y is less than 3. Okay, I can't have a negative variable. Well, what's the coefficient of that y even though I don't see it? That's right, it's 1. So now what I'm going to do, I need this to be positive. So I'm going to divide both sides by -1. Divide by -1. What did I just do? I divided by a negative. And whenever you divide by a negative, what do you have to do to your inequality symbol? You have to change the direction. So now I have y is greater than -3. So -3 is my important point. I know it's going to be an open circle. Now where is y larger? Y is larger going to the right. And that's it. So I want you to go to Moodle, see which homework problems you need to complete, and we'll talk about this in class tomorrow. Have a good night.